Hey everybody, Shauna Haley back with another TEDx Plano conversation. So glad you joined us here today. We're actually recording this on a Friday, so Friday, I want to remind us that there are days of the week and it is still the month of April. So we're functioning, we're high functioning people. With me today is one of our most passionate speakers, actually one of the speakers that closed out a TEDx Plano event, just really brought the energy to stage, Marquita De Jesus. She was on stage TEDx Plano 2016, and while she was there, what she was talking about was the power of living a radically ordinary life. Hi, Marquita. It's good to see you.
Hello. So great to see you and be on this platform.
Oh, well, we're glad to have you back. And it was so interesting because when I sent my email to you, you were like, I was just thinking about TEDx. These things come around.
Yes, it was like the 4-year anniversary of my TEDx talk, and it came up on my timeline. And I was like, wow, and I was going through that talk, and then you reached out to me, and I was like, synchronicity? I mean, wow.
That's right. Well, and the reason you popped into my mind, still one of the most powerful closing talks we've ever had in the 5 years that I've been doing TEDx Plano. But I just was thinking about the fact that we are all staying at home, although everybody can look around and they can see that I'm sitting in my office, but I'm sitting in my office essentially alone. There's maybe one other person here in this big suite with me. So we're all living small these days, or our circle has become much smaller. We're not going a lot of places, we're not doing a lot of things. And it seemed like a really good time to revisit your topic, because that is kind of what you were talking about, that you don't have to live small regardless of what your circle is. So how about we kind of jump in and talk a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you kind of hit the nail on the head there. People are feeling smaller. And I think that that's an epidemic that we've kind of not realized. I think people have been living small lives for a long time. And I think when you're alone in your house and you're kind of having to sit still, you're forced to reconcile that. And one of the big words I feel that's been kind of loosely thrown around during this time is the words essential and non-essential. And I think that those are these juggernaut, sort of words like joy or peace or guilt or blame. When you tell people they're non-essential, something happens on the inside, and you may not even totally respond to that at the conscious level, but it does kind of swirl around inside you. What does it mean to be essential? What makes me essential? What makes my work essential? And so I think that when people are having to not do something, they're forced to reconcile who they are in this moment. And if what I am is non-essential, then what am I? The story of the Little Prince has this quote, and it's literally my favorite quote of my entire life. And it says, what is essential is invisible to the eyes. And that's like a quote that I write everywhere I go. And that was the first thing that struck me when I heard this word being thrown around. And I'm like, people are going to suffering on the inside before they even are aware that they're digesting this concept of what it means to be essential or non-essential. And so when you talk about living small or feeling small, it comes right down to the idea that it's an easy time to believe that you don't matter, and God, you matter. you do matter. And it's not because of what you're doing out there. It's because of the fact that you're here and you are a person who's been on this planet doing so many things, but being even more than what you have done. And so I think right now is an excellent time for people to say, what is my essential work? And how do I define that? And how do I take my life that may be non-essential by some standards. And I understand that, essential, non-essential is about health and that whole public space. But on a greater scale, when you're talking about purpose and work and feeling like you matter, what does it mean to shape your life in a way that lets you know to yourself, I'm an essential part of a greater story. And it doesn't have to be, this extraordinary move. It doesn't have to be doing all this stuff out there in the world. It can be being in your space and being at peace and sharing that peace with the people who are in your circle, because ultimately those are the ones who are always watching anyway. And so I think that there is space to live bigger, from within your home, because I think that's where it all starts anyway.
So tell me, for yourself, how have you defined essential? What does essential look like at home?
At home, so I feel like I've always been in this place with dance where dance is my passion and dance is my work. Um, but even in that space, I vacillate, right? I'm like, okay, I'm meeting with these people who I believe are important, whether they're representatives, community leaders, and I'm trying to prepare myself and come across a certain way. And I've been in this space and I feel like all I want to do is dance. And I'm sort of reconciling that, no, like my essential work really is dance. And I've been so proud of my community. Dancers from the Metropolitan Opera House to, Joe Schmo Studio in Nowhere, Alabama, everybody was offering online classes for free within, the first 7 days of this quarantine. And I've just been so proud of my community and so proud to call myself a dancer and an artist and a choreographer, and to be told, to be at home out of work because my work isn't essential has almost reinforced, like, yes, my work is essential. And I've been really engaged with my dancers and talking to them and hearing their ideas and asking them to create classes and create content and choreography. And so for me, it's kind of getting back to those basics of, this isn't just my passion. This is my purpose. And it was something that I knew, but it's easy to vacillate when you're living in a world that doesn't necessarily view what you do as important. And so for me, that's become a driving force. Also being a mom. I hear so many stay-at-home moms say, I'm just a mom, or I just stay at home. And so being here with my kids, as a result of the quarantine, I'm realizing how much influence I have. I mean, if I say something, it's like 3 days later, I hear them repeating it, and they are so mimicking everything I do right now. And it's made me incredibly aware of the level of influence I have over my kids. I think that when your kids are doing TikTok dances and all the funny things on social media and videos, you really feel like the world out there has so much influence over them. But this quarantine has really made me aware of just how much those eyes are watching me. And it really is precious. It's frustrating at times. I mean, it's hard. You want to go in your bedroom, close the door, and scream. But there have been such sweet moments that I know I never would have had without this. And I know that I can continue on with that. So I think my essential work is definitely realizing my passion for dance and just my passion for being a mom and the importance of that work. Just even if it's just me. So yeah.
Well, it's interesting, talking about dance. I fall under that category that the government has assigned as essential workers. So, because I work in the government and I'm doing public information, and that's pretty important right now. But it's interesting that for myself, when I go home and my brain is just so very tired and I'm worn out from the work, what I find myself escaping to on the internet is TikTok videos. I'm watching dance. I'm watching artists literally do live paintings. I'm watching theater performances, live
Yes.
musicals. Art has become essential to me, and it always was. I'm an art appreciator, but the the appreciation that I have for it now is very different. It's almost like art takes a special role in times of crisis because it speaks in a way that we don't even know that we need to express. What would you say to other artists out there that are struggling? Like, how do you be creative when you're constrained, or is that a good thing?
Yes. Wow. I just want to thank you first for that feedback. About how art is affecting you right now, because my kids dance and I dance, so it's really wonderful to hear that that's something that's giving you comfort and engagement right now. Um, I feel like, and again, I can only speak for myself, but my art has definitely become my refuge during this time. And I feel like for most artists, especially if you're a professional artist, it's really the first place that you go. For dance, there's the element of training and keeping your technique up, but there's also just the element of being able to express yourself. I was talking with a person in the nonprofit world the other day, and she said this term that resonated with me so strongly, and that term was story equity. And artists have a way of creating story equity in ways that I think are available to other people, but you take a story and you show how it matters in this personal and very individualized way, and it magnifies the power of perspective. And it's easy during this time when so many ideas are being shared and so many people are afraid and fearful to get lost in that story. But I believe artists come around and they take those stories and they make them matter at the individual level, and they take your perspective and they give you permission to see things differently. And at a time when you don't necessarily feel like you have permission, like there's so many things you have to do and so many ways you have to do it. When you get permission from someone, like, actually, I don't have to see things this way. I can see them differently, and I can live out a different story than what I'm currently doing. And I don't have to be in this space, and I don't have to feel lonely. I can feel engaged. I can feel inspired. I can feel aware. I do think that the work of artists during times of crisis, exactly as you said, becomes so important, because it literally changes the story as the story is unfolding. And I think for artists trying to stay engaged is understanding that that is more than even an essential work. It's a sacred work. It's a sacred act when you take words and you create music, when you take instrument and you are able to embody ideas at a level where anybody can hear it, and it transcends even what you can think or perceive. It goes to a level beyond. And I think we're saying that all over the world already, but I think it's important for artists, and I'm speaking to professional art, but also to hobbyists and to students of art and appreciators of art, to know that that space that's created is a sacred space, and it's important, and it's essential for empathy and perspective taking and understanding things in a variety of ways.
Yeah, and I was thinking, just for myself, that creativity is expressed in so many ways, and it's a trap that we fall into where we say, "I'm not a creative person." Well, define creativity. For you, that may be dance, that may be art, that may be making a really amazing meal where you've tinkered in the kitchen, but there is an element of creativity. There's a part of us that wants to express itself, and we need to embrace that opportunity while the opportunity is present, where there's maybe a little more time than there would normally be.
Yes, I totally agree with that.
Well, what do you think, just from your perspective, if we've all been staying home, what do you think the ramifications will be when we don't have to stay home? What can we learn from this experience of living smaller with intentionality that changes the way that we live a little larger, but maybe in a small way?
Yeah, I think the ramifications could be monumental. Even just from this time in quarantine, globally, we've seen the Earth's atmosphere start to shift. The air is cleaner. Things are changing, and I think everyone's desperate to go back to normal, but I think you have to go back and look at normal and say, okay, what am I desperate to move towards? Because this is about moving forward and thinking forward. And so I would say, if you're going back to normal, or you're going back to society, um, with new ideas, that is going to need to be actualized in a new way. And I believe that there is no need to live small. And I struggle with the word small. I don't even call my dancers small. I call them short. So I do think when I when I think of living small, I'm more so, um, understand yourself as ordinary, just like everybody else, and extraordinary, just like everybody else, right? We are all potential power players in a story bigger than what we can imagine. So just decide what piece of the story is yours, you know? And I think that that's what this time is about, saying to yourself, what to the story is mine. If I've been a homeschool mom during all of this, I'm potentially a leader for other moms who are new to homeschool. So how can I actualize that when all those moms are, back at work? And do I go back to normal, or can I continue to be a leader? If I've really been diving into new ways of studying, or new ideas during this time, actualizing that after this is going to be a big piece. And it's not necessarily about doing something right away, it's just understanding yourself differently and giving yourself permission to do something different. And I think that that's going to look, that's going to take place at the individual level, really. But I would just say, start off with permission. After this, I'm going to do maybe one thing that's different. I know for me, when I went to Cambodia and I worked with, girls who have been rescued from human trafficking, and I came back, it was like I was back to normal, right? And so I could go back to normal, but I could never go back to normal because I had had an experience that changed me from the inside out. And so had I gone back to normal, I would have missed the big it
Mhm.
for which I was, so marvelously made. It's like I didn't want to miss it. And so I started small. I just did something every day for a year to bring awareness to human trafficking. And that might be a Facebook post. It was conversations with people, but I did that for a year. And then by the end of that year, I was approached to join someone to start a nonprofit. And so it's like, you don't know where small steps can take you, but understanding how you've been uniquely coded for those small steps, and understanding how things become important to you, and the fact that it's important matters. And even if it's, I really just want to cook more, that matters.
Mhm.
And knowing people who are in need, I think also matters, because I've been noticing there's some judgment out there from people who are like, people are stupid, I don't know why you're doing this or that right now. And it's like, if you don't know anyone in great need, there are people who can't stay at home because they don't have heat, or cold air, or food, or they are in abusive relationships. And if you don't know anyone who is suffering as a result of this quarantine, meet them. Meet them after this, and put yourself in a relationship with them, because it's always easier to dish out judgment than engage in transformation and collaboration. So I think there are so many potential ramifications for this. And I think we're kind of anticipating trauma, or the introverts to be like, no, not again. But I think that there are also so many potential beautiful and amazing stories. I think our kids having gone through this will be transformed positively. I think that our level of awareness will go up. I think our environment is going to benefit. I actually think that the ramifications could be way more positive than we're anticipating. But it starts at the individual level. It starts with one person deciding, what does that mean for me? And I don't know what that means for anybody. I know what it means for me. But I want people to take this into their own hands and decide to just, what happens next? What is my ramification on this personal, ordinary level? What does that look like for me?
Well, is there anything else that you would encourage our TEDx Plano audience to consider, as we all hope that we're kind of nearing, either we're in the middle, the late middle, or maybe even nearing the end of this experience? What should they keep in mind?
I would say, and I heard this once in this book called Course in Miracles, and it says man's first error is forgetting to laugh. And it's from this error that all other errors come. And it's forgetting to laugh at something that is funny that brings on the next moment where now you're worried, and then the next moment, well, now you're lonely, and then the next moment, so I would say find ways to laugh. And I know that may seem incredibly trite, but it is so valuable. Even when we hear laughter, it does something inside of us, and it changes us. And so if you're out and you're laughing, you're engaging other people in laughter. And I know that that's something that I've even seen here at my own house with my girls. We went out and we played Frisbee, and we were literally the only people outside in my neighborhood. But we were cracking up because we kept missing the Frisbees because it was the windiest day and it was a terrible idea. And we were just like bent over laughing at ourselves because the Frisbee was like just going back in our face over and over again. And then within an hour, I'm telling you, there are probably 60 people outside engaging with their own families. And so we may not be able to interact at the level that we're used to, but there are still things that we can share. And laughter is just one of those things. And so whether it's turning up the music in your house, I know I have been dancing for fun. I'm dancing for instruction on Zoom. But then after those Zoom classes, I shut down my computer. I turn up like some pit bull song and I just dance like I'm going crazy, and I laugh at myself. And it's just like, you got to figure out ways to laugh and have a good time, because from that joy spark other things like ideas and creativity and interest in something beyond this quarantine. Like those things surface, and all of a sudden the next thing you know, you're following this whole path of creativity, and you've even forgotten that you're stuck in the house because you don't feel stuck anymore because you're actually in a place of joy. So I would say don't forget to laugh, and be intentional about laughter.
So I love that, lean into the memes, if that's the only thing that can make you laugh, look at them. We're all going through this together.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, this has been a great conversation. I want to tell you kind of the three things that stood out to me, in addition to always find a reason to laugh, because I do agree, laughter releases that tension. But I loved your comment. What are you desperate to move towards? What a great question to ask, ourselves as we're looking at, like, I gotta move forward. Well, why? What is the thing? It's not probably what it was before. And I also love this idea of what piece of the story is mine, because this story of collective quarantine has set a new narrative that we're all part of it, but we all are a character in the story. So what piece of that is ours? And what a great thing to consider, because that's also something that you can plant moving forward in the lives of others. Let me tell you my story. Let me tell you what happened and what I learned from it. And then finally, and I think this is a good thought for everyone, we're all going to go back to normal, but we don't have to be the same. And I think that's a tremendous, that we are forever changed through this experience, but how we are changed is up to us, our attitude, our intentionality, and our choices moving forward. We can use this for greatness, or we can use this for destructiveness. And so let's make
Yes.
wise choices. Well, thank
Yes.
you. Yeah, thank you again, Marquita. This has been great. I remember all of the reasons why you were such a great closing speaker for us. Just so inspirational that our lives, we may feel like they're ordinary, but there's radicalness in ordinary, because we define ordinary for our lives, and we have extraordinary impact through it. So thank you again, and thank you, TEDx Plano, for tuning in for another conversation. We'll be back to see you all again soon. Bye.
Bye.